Every morning at Yamaoka High School, the janitor opened the doors at precisely 5:30 a.m. His routine never changed. Unlock the side gate, switch on the hallway lights, sweep the east corridor, check the bathrooms, light incense in the teacher's lounge, an old habit left behind by his predecessor, who believed it kept old things away. But something began to shift during the second week of November. It started subtly. One morning, Mr. Hoshino noticed a faint outline on the linoleum floor outside Class 2B. It looked like a scuff mark until he saw the shape of toes. 5 delicate bare toes. Not prints, a shadow. Not caused by light, not caused by anyone. He looked up. No one stood there. Just a long, dark silhouette of a girl with long hair, head bowed low, arms dangling at her sides. Her shadow stretched across the wall, but there was no body to cast it. He blinked. It was gone. He chuckled uneasily and muttered, "Too early for this." But the next day it was back. This time the shadow stood outside Class 3A. Same girl, same posture, still no one there. By Friday, there were 3. One outside the library, one at the stairwell, one near the music room. All identical. All facing the wall, their heads tilted slightly, like they were listening. Students began to whisper, not loudly, not during class, but in the quiet moments, before lunch, between periods, after school while packing bags. "Did you see it too? Mine moved when I looked away. I heard her humming." One girl fainted in the bathroom. Another ran out of class screaming when the lights flickered and she saw a shadow standing inside her locker. The school counselor, Miss Fujita, called an emergency assembly. "Stress due to finals," she said. "Mass hysteria, nothing more." She shouldn't have said that, because the next day her office door was marked with a black handprint. And that afternoon, she stopped coming to work. No explanation, no goodbye. No one saw her pack her things, but students whispered they saw a 4th shadow appear, leaning silently by the counselor's window. Hair long, head bowed, one arm slightly raised, like it had just knocked. In classroom 1C, a girl named Mizuki started documenting everything. She didn't believe in ghosts. She believed in patterns. She began a journal titled "The Girl Who Left Shadows Behind." Every day she would draw the position of each shadow. She noticed they moved, slightly, a few inches closer to doors, windows, desks. Sometimes they'd vanish completely, only to reappear somewhere else the next morning. She wrote, "They don't act like reflections, they act like they're waiting." She even set up a hidden camera on the 3rd floor corridor pointing toward the old storage room. At 3:17 a.m., the recording showed the hallway lights flickering once, a shadow forming out of nothing. It slowly tilted its head toward the camera, then walked backward into the wall. No footsteps, no sound, just pure, smooth movement, like smoke. She uploaded the footage anonymously to a ghost forum. It was deleted within 5 minutes. The school's principal brought in a Buddhist monk the following week. He performed a cleansing ritual, lit incense, chanted, sprinkled salt. The next morning, 6 shadows appeared, all lined outside the main hall. They were now standing closer to the ground, not upright, as if crouching, ready to crawl. Students stopped coming to school. Parents demanded answers. One boy tried to paint over a shadow outside the boys' bathroom. The moment his brush touched the floor, he screamed. His eyes rolled back. He collapsed. He never woke up. No bruises, no explanation, just a quiet exhale and a faint black smudge on his palm. Mizuki's entries became frantic. They're growing. I saw one inside the science lab cupboard. They whisper at night. They whisper names. Then, she made a discovery. All the shadows had something in common. They matched the exact height and hair length of a girl who died at the school 2 years ago. A girl named Yui Takano. She had fallen from the 3rd floor. They said it was suicide, but her shadow was never found that day, only her body. Mizuki wrote, "What if the body died, but her shadow stayed behind? And now, it's calling the others." Mizuki didn't sleep that night. She sat curled in her desk chair, blanket draped over her legs, staring at the glowing screen of her laptop. Yui Takano. The name flickered on the search bar like a haunting refrain. No obituaries, no school statement, not even a photo. The only thing she found was an old blog post from a student who mentioned Yui in a passing sentence. After Yui fell, they sealed the 3rd floor storeroom. No one goes near it now. We all know why, but we don't say it. Mizuki knew the room. That's where the camera caught the shadow walking into the wall. That's where the janitor refused to clean. That's where the first shadow appeared. The next day, she came to school early, before sunrise. Her fingers trembled as she held her phone, flashlight on, feet silent on the polished floor. The hallway was cold, too cold. She reached the 3rd floor, stood in front of the sealed storage room. Someone had scratched into the wooden door with something sharp. "She's not gone." She took a photo. Suddenly, a shadow passed across the screen. She spun around. No one. Just her. And the feeling that something had just left the room. That afternoon, a new student transferred into 2B. A girl named Saki. Tall, pale, long black hair that never swayed when she walked. Her eyes were downcast, her voice barely audible. Her shoes were too big for her feet. No one remembered seeing her name on the list before. No one remembered the principal introducing her. She just appeared. Mizuki noticed something strange. When Saki stood up to read during literature class, there was no shadow behind her. Not from the window, not from the ceiling lights. Nothing. Like the light refused to touch her. Or like something had taken her shadow already. That evening, Mizuki reviewed the footage again. She slowed the video of the 3rd floor camera to frame by frame. And there, at 3:17:41 a.m., she saw something new. When the shadow moved into the wall, a second shadow came out. It didn't walk, it crawled, dragging its arms, dragging a long line of black smears along the floor. It stopped just outside the storage room and stayed. The timestamp flickered. 3:17 a.m., the same time Saki transferred in. Mizuki started to draw again, but her sketches changed. They were no longer just maps of shadow positions. Now they were full-body images, girls without faces, hair cascading over their shoulders, arms too long, feet floating slightly off the ground. Some of the sketches were labeled Stairwell Girl, Locker Girl, The One in the Mirror, and one page she had circled in red ink, Saki. The notebook felt heavier every day, like something was growing inside its pages. One night, her friend Naomi called her in a panic. "Mizuki, are you awake?" "Yeah? What's wrong?" "I saw one." "Where?" "In my room." Mizuki's breath caught. "Naomi, that's not where they stay. They've never left the school." A long pause. "It wasn't just standing there." "Then what?" "It was kneeling beside my bed." "Doing what?" "It was tracing my shadow with its fingers." The line went dead. Mizuki called back. No answer. At school the next morning, Naomi's seat was empty. No one asked why. The teacher marked her as transferred. But Mizuki checked the records that night. There was no transfer application, no withdrawal form, not even a phone number. Naomi's name was gone. From the desk, from the school website, from her class photo. But there was one new shadow outside the nurse's office. Head bowed, kneeling, like it was waiting for someone else. That night, Mizuki dreamed of the storage room. In the dream, the door creaked open. Inside was a mirror, covered in old prayer strips. Each strip was peeling off, one by one. She saw her own reflection, but behind her stood 10 shadows, some crouching, some upside down, all of them with her face. Mizuki woke up, gasping for air. Her bed sheets were twisted tight around her legs, soaked in sweat. Her window, which she had locked before bed, was now slightly open, just enough to let in the sharp November air. And on her wall, drawn in charcoal, smeared and crude, was a silhouette. A girl, hair down, face missing. Just a black outline, shaped exactly like the ones at school. But this one was facing her. She didn't go to school that day. Instead, she went to the public library, 3 stations away. She needed answers, old ones. There, buried in dusty archives and forgotten news clippings, she found it. Yui Takano, death ruled an accident, no foul play suspected. But scribbled in red pen over the article, someone else had written, "It wasn't an accident. She was chosen." Beneath that was a torn envelope from the school's disciplinary board. Date, 2 weeks before Yui's death. The reason? Violation of school spirit protocols. That term didn't exist anymore. No student today knew what it meant. But in a folder shoved in the back of a broken drawer, Mizuki found an old handbook from 1996. Inside, under a chapter titled Spiritual Containment, it read, "Room 3F must remain sealed at all times. Breaking this seal may result in displacements of soul-bound reflections. The girl must not return." Mizuki took a taxi straight to school. She lied to the security guard, said she forgot her phone in the music room. It was nearly 7 p.m. The building was empty. The halls echoed every step she took, like someone was walking just 1 pace behind her. She climbed to the 3rd floor. There was no room 3F on the current map, but there was a bolted door at the end of the hallway, no label, no sign. Exactly where the shadows first appeared. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the handle. It turned. The room was silent, not abandoned, forgotten. Dust clung to every surface. Shelves leaned against each other like exhausted bones. An old chalkboard stood cracked, symbols drawn in red ink still half visible. And in the center, a tall mirror stood on a rotting wooden frame, but it was covered in prayer papers, hundreds of them layered over each other like scales. Old kanji inked in brush strokes, some faded, some still burning red. Her breath caught. The air was thick, too thick. Her phone vibrated, an unknown number message. "Don't look in the mirror. It remembers your face." She dropped the phone. It landed with a hard crack, screen flickering, camera facing the mirror. And through the phone, she saw movement. One strip of paper peeled off, then another. A slow rustle. No wind, no hand. But as the strips fell, she saw her own reflection again. Only her reflection wasn't mirroring her. It stood still. It blinked after she did. And then it smiled. Mizuki stepped back. Her reflection stayed in place. And then, behind her reflection, another girl stepped into view. Long black hair, pale skin, bare feet. Head down, shadow forming before her, long, dark, stretching forward. The girl raised a hand, and so did Mizuki's reflection. Not Mizuki, the reflection, mimicking the ghost, not the girl in front of the mirror. Mizuki turned to run, only to find Saki standing silently in the doorway. Her expression was blank, her eyes empty, and her voice, for the first time, was clear. "You saw her." Mizuki nodded, breathless. "You're not supposed to see her." "Who is she?" Mizuki whispered. Saki's eyes shimmered like glass. "She's the one who stays when no one remembers her. She's the one whose shadow we borrowed. Now, she wants them all back." From behind Mizuki, the mirror began to hum, a low, droning vibration that made her ribs shake. Saki didn't blink. She whispered, "You have a choice. Turn around and remember her name, or leave and forget your own." The lights above them buzzed, then went out. Total darkness. But behind Mizuki's eyelids, she still saw the shape of the girl, burned into her vision, even with her eyes closed. She ran, through the hall, down the stairs, past the janitor's closet, where a new shadow now knelt with its hands pressed to its ears, like it was listening. She didn't stop until she was home. But her shadow? It dragged behind her slower than her feet, almost reluctant, almost like it was trying to detach.
Mizuki didn't return to school for 3 days, not because she was afraid, but because she couldn't remember how to get there. Every familiar corner in her memory felt burned out. The school's address was blurry. The daily path she used to walk became a maze of unfamiliar streets. She opened her phone to check maps, but the route spun endlessly. And when she typed in the school's name, no results found. That evening, as she washed her face, she looked into the mirror. She was wearing her school uniform, and her right hand was covered in a fine layer of ash, as if she had just stepped out of a room that no longer existed. The only thing Mizuki could remember clearly was the name, Yui Takano. And Saki's voice, "She's the name that was forgotten." That night, Mizuki flipped through the last few pages of her notebook, but the final page wasn't written in her handwriting. Just one line, faintly burned into the paper. "You remember me, so now you carry my name." Signed, Yui. The next day, a strange message began circulating among the students. It wasn't sent, it wasn't downloaded, it just appeared on their phones when the sun began to set. Message: "Do you know your own shadow? Stand in the hallway at 6:06 p.m. You'll see hers first." That same evening, a senior boy disappeared. He was the one who'd laughed loudest about the girl without a body. Security cameras recorded only a single moment. He stood in the second-floor hallway at 6:07 p.m., staring at the glass window. In the reflection were 3 figures, but he was alone.
Mizuki realized something horrifying. Yui hadn't just left shadows. She left voids. And one by one, those voids were consuming memory. Friends forgot her. Teachers forgot. Records vanished. Even the internet knew nothing. And now, Mizuki felt it happening to herself. She tried to write her name. Her hand shook. The pen slipped. The ink smudged. When she looked at the paper, she'd written, Takano Mizuki. She froze. That wasn't her last name. Or maybe it is now. In her bedroom mirror, she noticed something worse. Her shadow had split in two. One stood silently behind her. The other was crawling along the floor toward the door. She bolted out of the house, gripping the phone that once held the old footage. She tried playing the 3:17 a.m. video, but the file was gone, replaced by a single image. A school hallway, lined with dozens of shadows. No bodies, no faces, just shadows. And a caption, Your name is no longer yours. Desperate, Mizuki traveled to an old shrine at the outskirts of the city. Locals called it the Shrine of the Forgotten. There an elderly monk sat on the stone steps, blind in one eye, his hands resting on a worn rosary. She told him everything, every detail. He listened silently, then asked, Do you remember the name you were born with, child? She hesitated, shook her head. The monk sighed. Not everyone dies from the curse. Some live on, but not as themselves. They carry the ghost's name instead. And when no one remembers who they used to be, they become the next shadow. That night, Mizuki stood in front of the mirror once more, and this time, the girl in the reflection smiled first. Mizuki stopped using mirrors. She covered them in her house, every one. But that didn't stop the reflection. It began to appear in other things. The window of the bus, the black screen of her phone, the puddle near her mailbox after rain. Each time she would catch just a glimpse, not of herself, but of someone else wearing her face. Someone who didn't blink when she did. Someone who smiled first. Her friends no longer replied to her messages, not out of cruelty, but because they didn't seem to remember her. She passed Naomi's house one evening and saw Naomi playing in the yard, laughing, carefree. Mizuki called out. Naomi turned. Her smile faded. Who are you? Mizuki's heart dropped. It's me, Mizuki. Naomi shook her head slowly. There's no Mizuki in my class. Mizuki wandered the streets late that night, clutching the one item no shadow could erase, her notebook. She flipped through its pages like clinging to proof that she had ever existed. But even that began to change. Some of her own entries were rewritten in another style, each date stamped with the same time, 3:17 a.m., and one line kept repeating in increasingly darker ink. She smiled first, so I followed. By the end of the week, she stopped dreaming, not because she wasn't tired, but because her dreams were now being lived by someone else. She would wake up and find things moved around in her room, her socks mismatched, her toothbrush wet. One night, she opened her closet and found a school bag she didn't own. Inside it, a uniform embroidered with a name tag, Takano Yui. Desperate, Mizuki visited the school for the last time. It was Sunday, no students, but the janitor was there. He recognized her, or at least pretended to. You shouldn't be here, he muttered, not meeting his eyes. I need to see room 3F. He dropped his broom. That room was sealed before I was even hired. But it opens at night, Mizuki said. It remembers. The janitor looked pale. Then it remembers you. She walked the hallway alone. It was quiet. No whispers this time. No flickering lights. Just an eerie stillness, like the building was holding its breath. Room 3F was no longer locked. It was slightly ajar. Inside, no mirror. Only a circle of shadows, moving slightly, like breathing. In the center stood Saki. Or rather, what was left of Saki. She smiled, but it wasn't hers. You came back. Mizuki swallowed hard. Am I next? Saki tilted her head. You're not next, she whispered. You're already inside. The shadows turned. Each one had Mizuki's eyes. Some wept, some grinned, some had no mouths at all, and one, at the very back, stepped forward. You smiled first, it whispered. Mizuki ran, but her feet didn't echo. The hallways no longer recognized her steps. The exit signs flickered, but none pointed the right way. Every hallway curved inward. Every staircase looped back. The school had no end, because Mizuki no longer belonged outside. She was part of the memory now, not someone remembering Yui, but someone being remembered by shadows. That night, a new student was added to Class 2B. Her name, Mizuki Takano. She was quiet, pale, long black hair. She always looked down. She never raised her hand. And if you sat behind her, you'd notice her shadow moved, even when she didn't.
The new girl, Mizuki Takano, was strange. She never spoke unless called on. She didn't bring lunch, and no one remembered seeing her arrive in the mornings. Sometimes the teacher would skip over her name during roll call, only to mutter it unconsciously a minute later, like it had slipped into their mouth without consent. Takano. Mizuki. No one questioned it. Not until Aya. Aya Tanabe sat behind Mizuki. She was a quiet girl too, but not empty. She liked drawing flowers in her notebook. She liked tea with too much sugar. She liked watching shadows dance on the floor during late afternoon classes. And one day, she noticed something. Mizuki never moved her legs, even after sitting for hours. But her shadow did. It shifted, tensed, twitched when no one was looking. And one Thursday, as Aya bent down to pick up her pencil, she saw it clearly. Mizuki's feet didn't touch the floor. Aya told her best friend after school. She's floating. Maybe she's on tiptoe, her friend shrugged. No, her shadow is walking without her. Her friend laughed, until the next morning when she arrived to find Aya's desk empty. Gone. No chair. No nameplate. No mention. Only a dark smudge where her shadow had once stretched beneath the desk. And Mizuki? She was smiling. That evening, a boy in Class 1C checked the class roster online. There was a new name. Tanabe Aya, transferred from unknown school. No photo, no details, just one line under notes. Shadow placement pending. And from then on, more students began to forget who they sat next to. Not all at once,
just a detail here, a name there. The girl who always tied her hair in braids, gone. The boy who used to sing in the stairwell. No one remembered a voice like that. But at 6:06 p.m. each day, their shadows remained, lingering by windows, doors, lockers, some upside down, some flattened like spilled oil, some looking back at you. The janitor tried to burn one, just once, a chalky shadow near the science room, but the flame flickered out before it touched the outline, and later that night, they found him locked inside the supply closet, teeth clenched, eyes wide, and his own shadow curled tightly around his body like a rope. He never opened his mouth again, but the next morning, a new phrase was found scratched into the gymnasium wall. She's not a ghost, she's a replacement. In the art room, a student painted a mural, a field of faceless girls standing under a dark sky, each with their backs turned, each casting a shadow that faced the viewer. When asked what it meant, he simply said, "It's a mirror you can't escape from." And still, every year, 1 or 2 new students are added quietly to the registry. Always girls, always pale, always soft-spoken. Their names are different, but their shadows are the same. They say names carry power. In ancient Japan, it was believed that to speak a spirit's true name was to bind it, or worse, invite it in. But at Yamaoka High, the names didn't invite spirits, they were taken by them. Aya's disappearance was the latest in a long chain, but it was the first time someone else started asking questions. Her older brother, Ren Tanabe, returned from university after Aya's sudden transfer went unexplained. The school wouldn't meet his eyes. Her homeroom teacher kept repeating she was never enrolled here. But Ren had her textbooks, her student ID, her notes. He even had a voicemail from her dated 3 days before she vanished. "Ren, I know you're busy, but there's a girl here. She has no past, no photos, and I think I've seen her shadow move without her." Then static, then silence, then the sound of breathing. Ren broke into the school at night, armed with nothing but a flashlight and his sister's sketchbook. In it was the last image she ever drew, a mirror, and inside it, not her reflection, but her shadow, stretching past the glass and reaching out. She'd written one word beneath it, replacement. Ren searched every hallway, but the school was too quiet, too still, like it was listening. At exactly 3:17 a.m., the hallway lights buzzed. He reached the 3rd floor. There was no room 3F on the map, but he found the door with no label, cracked open like a mouth caught mid-breath. Inside, shelves, dust, and a wall of nameplates, hundreds of them, chipped, rusted, burnt. Each one carved with a student's name, some recent, some dating back decades. Some still glowed faintly red. And in the middle, one plaque was still wet with fresh ink, Tanabe, Aya. Then came the whisper, soft, feminine, close to his ear, though no one stood there. "Would you like to leave a name, too?" Ren turned, flashlight shaking. There, in the mirrorless room, stood a girl in uniform, bare feet, hair down, head lowered. He couldn't see her face, but her shadow pulsed, alive, breathing, almost trembling with anticipation. "I just want to take her home," he said, voice cracking. The girl tilted her head, then trayed. Behind her, the shadows on the wall began to peel themselves free. Dozens, each shaped like a girl, each holding something in their hands, small, glowing, flickering like embers. Ren realized what it was. Names, spoken names, written names, memories of voices calling them at dinner, teachers reading them aloud, friends whispering them in laughter. One shadow stepped forward and opened its mouth, but no sound came out, just a cold rush of air and the faint, fading echo of Ren. He stepped forward, but the girl with no face blocked him. You can't take a name back once it's burned. He clenched his fists. Then burn mine instead. The girl paused. The shadows behind her hissed. Some laughed, some cried, some simply opened their arms. Do you even remember what your name is? She asked. He hesitated, just for a second, and that was enough. The shadows rushed in. When Ren woke, he was lying on the school steps. It was morning. The sun was too bright. His backpack was gone, his phone wiped clean, and when he tried to recall his sister's name, he couldn't, not fully. He remembered her smile, her voice, her drawings, but not the name. He searched for her sketchbook, but only found a new student roster tucked in his coat, and near the bottom, Ren Takano, Class 3C. That afternoon, in Class 3C, the teacher called a new name. A boy sat quietly in the back row, slender, pale. He never spoke. But his shadow, it trembled gently across the wall, almost like it was laughing. Long before it was called Room 3F, long before Yamaoka High had fluorescent lights and uniform codes, there was just a hallway and a mirror that should have never been made. The first record dates back to 1961, a hand-bound leather journal found in the old teacher's dormitory, hidden under floorboards. The cover bore no title, just a pressed fingerprint, faded and brown with time. Inside, entries were written in thin, erratic brushstrokes. The writer called himself Kazuki Morita, an art teacher, and he spoke of a student named Emiko. She painted reflections that didn't match the living. Her mirror portraits moved when no one looked, and then she painted herself without a face. Kazuki wrote of how the school once allowed spiritual arts to be practiced in secret, a hidden curriculum meant to bridge traditional beliefs with modern learning. But Emiko's works became unnatural. Each painting left a residue, not oil, not charcoal, but shadows that clung to walls even after the canvas was removed. One day, she gifted him a mirror, a handmade frame, antique glass. He accepted it out of politeness. He regretted it by nightfall, because when he looked into it, he saw his students watching him, even those who were absent, even those who had died years before. His journal's final pages were torn, but on the inside of the back cover, scratched into the leather, were 5 words. She was the first name. She never stopped reflecting. The mirror remained, stored, forgotten, until the school modernized and Room 3F was built directly over the original shrine. No one questioned the sealed box in the wall. No one dared unwrap the paper-covered glass panel during construction, until one rainy evening in 1982, a janitor pried open the frame. He died 1 week later. His shadow was found still standing in the room, though his body was cremated. That was the first recorded shadow retention, and after that, the room was locked, renamed, forgotten again, until Yui Takano, until she found it. Yui was different from the beginning, quiet, bright, obsessed with reflections. She once told a friend that mirrors could remember you longer than people could. She was the first student in decades to find the key to room 3F. She shouldn't have, but she did. And for a brief moment, the mirror remembered Emiko's smile. It remembered the first soul it had taken, and it offered Yui a choice: be forgotten by the world or remembered by the mirror. Yui chose reflection. She didn't jump, she vanished. And the next morning, a new girl was seen walking the halls. Same shoes, same voice, different name. No one questioned it, but the shadows grew. One girl became 2, then 4, then 10. And they all whispered Emiko's lullaby at 3:17 a.m. Now, in the present day, the mirror is no longer needed because the reflections walk freely. They exist in screens, in puddles, in eyes left too long in silence. Every forgotten name is stored somewhere in the dark. Every misremembered face becomes a canvas, and the ones who smile first are always the ones who once stood behind glass.
Her name was Kana Ishikawa. She transferred in the middle of winter semester. Quiet, polite, the kind of girl who rarely drew attention. But something about her arrival felt wrong. Not loud, not sudden, just misaligned, like a puzzle piece pressed where it almost fits, but not quite. She sat in the seat behind Mizuki Takano, the seat that used to belong to Aya Tanabe, though no one remembered Aya now, except Kana. Kana saw things others didn't. At first, she thought it was eye strain. After all, the classrooms were dim, the floors too reflective, the windows too clean. But every time she blinked, she noticed some shadows didn't match. There was a girl near the front row, always biting her nails, whose shadow kept its hands perfectly still. There was a boy by the window, tall, lanky, whose shadow leaned toward the classroom even when he turned away. And Mizuki, her shadow sometimes smiled when she didn't. One morning, while changing in the locker room, Kana glanced down and froze. Her friends laughed, chatted, brushed hair. Shadows rippled beneath their feet. But her own feet cast no shadow at all. She moved, twisted, lifted one leg. Still nothing. Just blank tile where her outline should be. She didn't scream, didn't panic. She simply walked home in the rain, head bowed, uniform soaked. And that night, she wrote a single sentence in her journal. Quote, "If I cast no shadow, am I already gone?" End quote. The next day, Mizuki approached her during break. It was the first time she had ever spoken directly to Kana. Her voice was soft, too soft like it had forgotten how to form syllables. Quote, "You see them, don't you?" End quote. Kana hesitated. Quote,
Why do some shadows move differently? End quote. Mizuki didn't answer. She just turned, slowly, and whispered, quote, "Yours hasn't arrived yet." End quote. After that, things changed. Kana began to feel the presence behind her. Not always, just when the lights flickered, or when her name was called and she didn't answer fast enough. She'd feel something breathe down her neck. Her reflection would linger a beat longer than it should. And sometimes, in her dreams, she stood in the hallway long after everyone else left, feet bare, eyes closed, and a shadow forming at her feet like spilled ink. One night, she returned to school after dark, not because she wanted to, but because her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown sender. Quote, "Come to room 3F. Your reflection is ready." End quote. The message was time-stamped 3:17 a.m. She walked there with slow, numb steps. The hallway was silent, too silent. But when she reached the door, it wasn't locked. And inside, there was no mirror, only Mizuki sitting cross-legged in the center, eyes open, not blinking. Around her, shadows twisted in impossible directions, up the walls, across the ceiling, into each other. Mizuki gestured, quote, "Your shadow has found you." End quote. Kana looked down, and for the first time in weeks, it was there, her shadow, long, thin, and smiling. Mizuki stood, quote, "You have a choice." End quote. Quote, "Most let it take them, some become the next name." End quote. Kana whispered, quote, "And if I don't choose?" End quote. The room darkened. The walls began to ripple like black water. From the corners, dozens of shadows crawled forward, head bowed, arms dragging. Some wept, some laughed without mouths, some whispered her name like a chant, "Kana, Pana, Kana." Mizuki smiled faintly, quote, "Then it chooses for you." End quote. Kana didn't move. The shadows circled closer, hungry but patient. They had waited decades. They could wait one more moment. Mizuki's voice drifted across the dark, almost kind. "You can become someone else now. It's easier that way." Kana looked down at her shadow. It was beautiful in a way, perfectly shaped, perfectly wrong, because it smiled without her, because it twitched even when she stood still, because it wasn't hers. She whispered, "No." A single word, but it cracked something, a pulse, a ripple. The shadows recoiled, not in pain, but in confusion. Mizuki's head tilted, her expression faded. "No one says no." Kana stepped back. Her shadow lunged forward, fast, silent, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she pulled a folded page from her pocket. Aya's sketch. She had found it weeks ago, left behind in a desk drawer no one ever opened, the one that showed the mirror with the girl reaching out. But Kana had drawn something over it, something no one else had dared. A cut, across the shadow's hand, a break. She dropped the page onto the ground, and the moment it touched the floor, light flooded the room, not from above, but from beneath. The shadows screamed, not loud, not human, like ink boiling. They scattered, melted, twisted back into cracks along the wall. Mizuki fell to her knees. She looked up, not with fear, with relief. You remembered. You remembered yourself. The next morning, Kana walked into class. Everyone stared, not at her, but at the empty seat in front of her. Mizuki's seat, gone. No books, no name tag, no one even mentioned it, except Kana. She whispered under her breath, "Thank you." And when she looked down, her shadow stood still. No smile, no twitch, hers. That night, she wrote one final journal entry. Maybe the curse isn't the shadows. Maybe it's forgetting who you are and letting someone else take your name. I won't forget again. In the old room 3F, dust settles. The mirror, still hidden behind broken shelves and prayer slips, holds no reflection. Just a faint crack across the glass, and behind it, something breathes. But for the first time in years, it cannot smile first.